Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Today we are doing my YA 2021 favourites. So I'm not going to hold all the books up because yes, I'm being lazy, but I've got 3 different videos to film for my favourites, and Becca was literally just sorting my shelves out and I had to pull off a load of books for 2 of the videos that I've done, and I've just put them all back. I'm tired and I don't want to. And I spent time changing my makeup and my clothes. I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but I did. So I'm just going to show graphics of these when I come around to talking about them. Out of all the books I've read this year, these are my YA favourites. I was going to just do it as one big video, and then too many favourites came up, and I've had to be a bit brutal and take some off, move some around, but these are the ones that I 100% want to recommend to you guys. So here we go. This is in no particular order. First up is Crave. I put this at the top simply because it was my most recent read and my most recent favourite. I thought for a long time that I was going into a YA slump, that I wasn't enjoying YA as much. Before this year, I tried to read YA multiple times. I think the whole of last year I read 10 books. YA just wasn't gripping me. But obviously, I was just reading the wrong authors because I absolutely loved this. This was supposed to be a buddy read for me. But after I started this, I literally read right through to chapter 41 before taking a break. And the only reason I took a break is because I needed to pre-film that day and it was like 4 AM. So I need to get some sleep in order to get up early enough to pre-film before my friends saw me that evening. That is the only reason I put this book down, otherwise it would have gone through in one sitting. So this follows a girl called Grace. She goes to this school, and as soon as she turns up she notices things are not necessarily normal. And this is in like the middle of Alaska, in the middle of like nowhere in Alaska. She's gone from a cushy life with her friends to her parents dying, to then having to move all the way out to Alaska. She's living with her cousin and her uncle, and things just go from there. The characters I really enjoyed, the twists I really enjoyed. Certain things I kind of felt like I saw coming. There were certain bits of this book that were kind of predictable and also kind of reminded me a bit of Twilight, but that didn't detract from the fact that I absolutely loved this. And it just goes to show that if it hadn't been for the time of day, if it hadn't been for the time of day, I would have binge read it in one sitting, and that to me screams 5 stars. So this was one of my favourites from this year. Next up, are you even surprised that this is on here? Spellslinger. And I've picked one book because I literally could have picked them all. I'm just going to point up there. Just these. Just the castell in general. I have found one of the most amazing authors who has the ability to write both YA and adult and raise issues that like are in everyday society, like prejudices and, you know, grief and things like that. He brings up those different issues, but he also has characters that are lovable and that are flawed and that just so good, so good. I like the fact that something happens, it's not just brushed over and pushed to the side like nothing ever happened. Actions have consequences, things happen. I absolutely adore this series so much. I would have loved these books anyway, but the fact that they are narrated by Joe Jameson and his voice acting in general is just amazing. I just love sitting listening to him. So the whole thing, the whole castell situation is just like one of my top tier faves of the year. Like, honestly, if you haven't read Spellslinger, where have you been? It's just, I recommend it 100%. Next up we have House of the Cerulean Sea. So I can't remember when I first heard of this, but I read this in like 2 sittings, I think. This follows a man called Linus who is very by the book. He works for an agency that deals with kids with supernatural abilities, and he goes to these orphanages to monitor them and determine whether or not that they will be a danger to society. He gets sent to the house in the Cerulean, where there are some kids there that they all have abilities and they all have quite unique abilities. He goes to them, to their homes, to determine what's going to happen to them, whether the home gets closed or whether it's going to stay open, and that the lovely caretaker of the kids can still continue to take care of them. This whole thing, the whole thing was just a hug. Linus, to start with, I didn't think I was ever going to like Linus, but by the end I was just in tears and I loved him to pieces. Next up we have Blood Witch. I have found Truth Witch this year through Jade from Jade Ray Reads. She seems to have been the person who I got most of my recommendations from throughout the beginning of this year, along with Gavin. The latter end of the year it was Becca and Liv. Earlier this year, clearly based on this, is like Jade and Gavin. Blood Witch is the third book in the series that follows Sythe and Isolde. Sythe is a Truth Witch. It starts with her story, and she has been hiding her abilities for her whole life. Obviously she's a Truth Witch, she can tell when people are lying, so she doesn't want to be used as a political tool. Her world is on the brink of war and she is trying to get by. Her and her friend Isolde just make a very, very egregious error. They attempt to rob the wrong person, get into trouble, and everything goes from there. Blood Witch was my favourite from this series because it follows one of my favourite characters, which is Edwin, and he is the Blood Witch that initially is targeting Sythe and Isolde. The last book for me in this series was questionable, but it could just be that I was in a slump at the time, so we'll see about that. But so far, out of the whole series, Blood Witch was my absolute favourite. Next up is one of my most recent faves as well. That is Crow Prince by Holly Black. This was recommended to me by both Danny and Liv. They were both shooketh. I mean shooketh that I had never read this book before, that I've never touched this series or anything by Holly Black. I've had this on my shelves for a while, for at least 8 months or so I think, and I've not touched it. I keep saying I'm going to get to it, but I think part of the reason why I haven't picked it up is part of the reason why I don't pick up a lot of books, which I really should stop doing, is because I hear people saying really negative things about it, see so many mixed reviews about it, and it just sort of puts me off wanting to read it. But I took the dive, I absolutely loved it, and I cannot wait to get to the next one. It's not the best written book in the world, it's not the most intricate plot and, you know, that kind of thing. It's never going to be that because it's YA, but it is really good. I love Jude. She's got fire, she's feisty. I just want to see where it goes from here. I'm curious to find out what the situation is going to be, but we shall see. I'm hoping to pick up the second book in the series next year, and I've just realised that wasn't on my list of series I would like to finish in 2022.
She's not that smart.
Am I normal? No. So next up we have Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, which is part of the Athena Club trilogy, I think. I absolutely, once again, 5-starred this. So this follows Mary Jekyll, who recently lost her mother, and she finds out that she's had secrets kept from her, and I don't really know how much to say about this, but she goes on a mission to find out what secrets her father was keeping. She ends up coming across a girl called Diana Hyde. We also find Jacqueline Frankenstein, Beatrice Rappaccini, and Catherine Moreau. So it follows them coming together, and I can't really say much more than that. And they're investigating things. And the reason I love this is because the way that it's written is that one of them is writing the story and trying to explain exactly what happened, when and where and whatnot. And then as she's telling the story, she's sat with the other people involved in the story, and they keep chiming in and throwing their two penny in, and the author actually breaks off mid-sentence to sort of put in a line of like what the person actually says. So for instance, she'll be writing something, one will say, "Oh God, you're not writing that, are you? That it didn't happen that way," and then it'll go back to the story because they're like, "Well, you write the rest of it then," or something like that, and then they'll continue with the story. So it's just kind of like it's a bit more interactive. It just feels a bit, yeah, it feels so good. So the next book is King of Scars. King of Scars follows Nina, Nikolai, and Zoya, and this is after what happens in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I just really enjoyed it. I didn't see some of the twists coming. I enjoyed the writing. Levi Dugo is just brilliant. Next one is Heartstopper. So this is a graphic novel that I've started reading. I only found Alice Oseman this year, and I bought all 4 Heartstoppers. I read them all so quickly. I love them all. I love Nick and Charlie. I love the relationship. I love everything about them. So yeah, 100% would recommend. Next up we have Sythe, and I really enjoyed this series. It was just so fun. After Ready Player One, I was really hoping that I would get back into sci-fi again, and I just adored all of this book. I would 100% recommend it. Still currently in the middle of Thunderhead, but so far also still loving it. So yes, I would 100% recommend. So far, I'm absolutely loving it. Okay, 2 more. Next up is Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I absolutely love this book. This was one of the ones that I had heard mixed reviews about. I heard there was not much witching in it. It wasn't any spells. It was more so about the suffragette movement. But I can honestly say that it's not. I listened to the audiobook as long as listening to it. I don't know how quickly I got through it, but I got through it really quickly. I missed out on this book so long because I was worried to pick it up because I didn't think I was going to like it, because everyone was like, it's historical, it's not witchy, it's, you know, blah blah. It is. It has a lot of witching in it, and spells, and just general witchcraftiness, and I love it so much. Finally, we come to Fire with Fire by Destiny Sawyer. I absolutely adored this book because it has dragons in and magic, and I just couldn't not love it. This follows 2 sisters called Dani and Eden Riviera. They are dragon hunters. Their parents are dragon hunters, and that is what they're raised to be, until one day Dani becomes so bonded with a lovely dragon called Nox, and it goes from there. So it is a standalone. My first ever fantasy standalone, I think, but I adore it, and I would 100% recommend that you pick this up. That's it from me for my favourite books of 2021. I am so looking forward to 2022. This year's been amazing. Anything can happen. So I'm really looking forward to next year. But I will wrap this up here. I hope you all have a lovely afternoon, evening or night, wherever you are. And I will see you all